want to thank everybody for joining us for today's webinar, which is hosted by Astrix and presented by Zontal. And we'll do a couple of quick introductions in just a moment. The topic for today is safeguarding research, the importance of comprehensive ELN data preservation. And we can go to the next slide, please. So before we jump into the actual topic and get into the presentation, just a quick little blurb about who Astrix is. We host a lot of webinars, and what we typically do is we bring in people from around the industry, many different company types, and thought leaders so that they can present their point of view on what's going on in the industry. Astrix is a consulting company. We do professional services, strategic consulting, and technology consulting for R&D. So we work almost exclusively in the life sciences sector. We're technology agnostic, which means we work with a very wide array of great technology companies like the one you'll hear from today. A couple of things that we're proud of. We've been at this now for over 28 years. And of all the employees we have, which are over 1,000 now, I believe, most of them, over 90%, hold advanced scientific degrees. So we're very much a science-based company ourselves, helping other science-based companies like you improve their technology and operations. So that's just a little bit about us. I want to take a moment now and introduce our speaker, and I'll sit back and enjoy the presentation with all of you. Danielle Moore is the Senior Product Manager here at Informatics at Zontal. So she brings a very good technical background, analytical chemistry, mass spectrometry, and software product development, and has experience in both managing software products to the informatics field as well as developing products. She leverages over 13 years of technical expertise in analytical science, and that's complemented by 9+ years in customer-facing roles. So I'm very much excited to hear the presentation myself, Danielle, so I'm going to turn it over to you, and I will come back on at the end to help with questions.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and to talk to you about ELN data preservation. It's a topic near and dear to my heart. I work in it every single day, and nerding out over it is pretty exciting for me. So thanks for joining. Here is our agenda for the day. I'm not going to read it out to you, but we're going to cover the journey. We're going to go through some data assessment and management options, and then we're going to go into the Zontal solution. So I like to start this with a problem statement because it's a pretty common problem. A large pharma company is facing patent litigation, which is time-consuming and costly. How do they find all their relevant data in an efficient and comprehensive manner? So let's keep that problem statement in mind. And we're gonna go through the journey of ELNs in life sciences. So we're gonna start, with kind of a generic large pharma company scenario. In 2002, the company adopts the new lab notebook standard and switches from paper notebooks to electronic notebooks. Paper notebooks are archived into physical filing systems or manually scanned for digital preservation. It's necessary, but it's time consuming. In 2014, the ELN moves to a cloud platform. It's a large IT infrastructure migration, which requires time and resources. In 2016, millions of dollars are spent on an acquisition. The acquired company uses a different ELN. So now the company has to maintain the new ELN while adding new users to the original ELN, more licenses. In 2017, the company begins the migration of the acquired ELN into their original ELN. It's a large effort. However, some data cannot be moved due to formatting incompatibility. Subject matter experts and scientists are consulted to determine what data they'll need access to and what can be discarded. Since the company's policies state that data cannot be permanently deleted, licenses of the acquired ELN must be maintained for legal and intellectual property purposes. The migration project is incomplete, but has now cost the company many months of time and money, not to mention the limited access to historical knowledge of the acquired ELN. In 2018, millions more dollars are spent on a new company acquisition with another new ELN. At the same time, the company learns that their original ELN will be sunset soon. With this information, it seems there's no point in attempting to migrate the newly acquired ELN to the original. Instead, they begin looking at new ELNs. Do they stay with their current vendor? Can they? What will be lost if they change vendors? Will they lose features that are needed for specific departments? So the company consults their SMEs and scientists to gather requirements and make a purchasing decision. All of this while paying licensing fees on the acquired ELN, even though users have been moved to the company standard. In 2019, the original ELN is officially sunset and a new ELN is purchased. Users must be trained on the new ELN, and everyone is working in both the original and the new ELN for a period of time. Data is everywhere. Adoption of the new ELN is slow for many departments due to user familiarity and effort. In 2020, the company recognizes there is a growing need to consolidate records. They're paying for 4 different ELNs while only actively using one. They start looking how to address this. What do they do with all the data across many ELNs? Do they attempt to migrate all of it into the newly purchased ELN? Can they do that? Like the migration effort in 2017, they require the time and knowledge of their lab scientists and their SMEs, which pulls them away from discovery work, and they need to determine what data needs to be kept. So they task their data experts to discover formatting issues which prevent data from going into the new ELN, etc. Since no single migration from old to new is 100% complete, all of the old ELNs have to be maintained to avoid loss of intellectual property and to meet company data preservation policies. Now the company is carrying licenses for 4 different ELNs, but only one is in use. Data is everywhere. It becomes harder to find as scientists leave the company since it's siloed in 4 different enterprise ELNs. From a legal standpoint, what happens if the company needs to defend a patent for the last 20 years? Our problem statement. Their legal team has to search multiple systems with data all over the place and certainly missing some altogether. The point of this journey is to say, it is costing the company millions of dollars when not a single migration of ELN data has solved the problem of getting rid of legacy software. There is no solution that meets the business needs of all the users in one place. Drug discovery is impacted and time to market is impacted. Okay, that is the journey. It's a common problem. So let's talk about what the options have been traditionally for ELN archiving and those benefits and challenges. Now, again, I say traditional because we've advanced quite a bit. Archiving used to be, okay, everything's full and we need to move this so that it stops slowing down the system. We're going to offload it. But the challenges in that, data quality. I like to think about data quality like I think about putting food in a freezer bag in the freezer once you get it home. If the bag isn't labeled, once it gets ice crystals on it, nobody knows what's in that bag until you defrost it and then you can figure out what it is. Data quality is very similar to that analogy, to me at least. So it's about, is the data organized and standardized? Is it complete or is it incomplete with experiment records? Can you prove that? What about obsolescence? We talked about legacy systems. If the data or the system is obsolete, but you have to maintain those licenses, that's a challenge. If the data is locked in a vendor-specific format, that's a challenge. User adoption, the experience, change management, teaching a new tool, training and teaching a new tool. Those are all big challenges with data migration or archiving. Scalability concerns. You may have started your records with 10 records to 500 to 2,500. What happens when you have millions of records? The more data, the larger the need for a solution with higher storage capacity. And then I mentioned briefly the migration effort. It is always overlooked. It is always underestimated. It is expensive. It is cumbersome. But of course, intertwined with the challenges are benefits. So there's knowledge preservation and protecting IP and future-proofing. So those all need to be considered when you're thinking of archiving. To focus a little more on the migration itself, you need to maintain existing access controls. There's a large regulatory concern associated. When you migrate that data, is it able to keep the electronic records and signatures and the audit trails? Is it compliant with your regulatory body? So these are all things that, again, with migration, it's a big thing you need to think about and address. Same with cybersecurity. You need to choose a solution that prevents security breaches. And then you also need to maintain company policies. So if there are experiments that have restricted access, that access needs to maintain its restrictions to specific user groups or user roles. It needs to follow policies for record retention and legal compliance and legal holds. So these are all big parts of migration that can fall through the cracks pretty easily, and why migration is such a huge undertaking. Okay, so now let's assess data value and our data management options. The cost of data collection and preservation, it can be quite large. So if we look at maybe the average licensing cost on an ELN at a large company, we're looking at about $1,100 per user. So if you have 5,000 users, you're spending $5.5 million on your ELN. LIMS are even more expensive. Then there's data storage, and that can range widely, and it depends on what that means, right? So on the right side, you see a pie chart, and I'm not going to go into this, but it is just a broken down traditional STMS cost per year on all the things that it encompasses. But primarily at a large company, the storage cost is a data lake. But a data lake is just an archive of unstructured data that still requires the original data producer to read. The American Chemical Society published an article in September 2023 that estimated about 80% of scientific data becomes unavailable in 20 years or less, which doesn't even hit the retention policies of most large companies. And all of these costs come out of the overall budget for R&D. So it's important to choose data collection and storage solutions wisely. From the regulatory side of things, when you're talking about patent protection, proving patent, all of this stuff, I have a former colleague who works on the regulatory and compliance side of the industry, and we've had this discussion. And when an auditor comes in, it starts with, do you have the data? Where is the raw data? They want to see the raw data. They don't care if it's been moved to a LIMS. They don't care where it is, but they always want to go back to the raw data. Is it available? Is it unchanged? People have a problem keeping those pieces and keeping them intact and available. And auditors always want to know, where did it start? What did the results mean? You know, if you think about chromatography, if you change the baseline and reprocess the result, what did the calibration curve look like? And is this result being cheated off of, you know, what the raw data actually means? So it's a big deal to keep that raw data. Second, is the data complete? Auditors are also looking for traceability and audit trails. It is huge. That is compliance 101. You have to have traceability. Anything that offers doubt will be a problem. And third, who can find and access the data? So typically before an audit or an investigation, the QA department will look for the data and recommend actions before the investigator comes in. It's up to the labs to make corrective actions and assess the impact. So the investigator's coming in to check to see that the protocol is being followed, that the SOP is being followed, and they're writing to the violation of not following SOPs and protocols. And I like to think of, on LinkedIn, there's a video of a dad who's tasked his kids with writing down the instructions on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then they bring their instructions and he attempts to make the sandwich based off of their instructions. And it's very funny because it's very relatable if you've ever worked in a lab off of an SOP, off of a, you know, quote unquote recipe. If there is a step that's missed or assumed, it can be a very big problem with your results. So you could make a sandwich off of one piece of bread if, you know, they forgot to say, pull 2 pieces of bread out of the bread bag. You could still make a sandwich, but how does the decreased surface area of one piece of bread impact the remaining steps of making that sandwich? And we relate that to lab usage in, are you looking at resource wasting if you didn't write your protocols or your SOPs correctly? If you work in any kind of animal stuff, whatever, you might be wasting animals, you might be destabilizing your samples, degrading your samples because you're not storing them properly. All of those things need to be considered when the QA department is reviewing what the auditor is going to be looking at. So from inspection, those observations can impact the approval process for, say, the patent, which of course then impacts the ability to market and sell the product. So going back to kind of the patent, if we look at the actual cost of patent litigation, once you've got the patent, it's now averaging about $2.8 million per patent litigation. But more importantly, losing a patent battle will cost the company hundreds of millions of dollars. And again, these costs all come out of the overall R&D budget. It's so important to have completed data that can be found and accessed when necessary. Okay, so now that we've seen the costs and the importance of data to research and regulations, let's separate out the logical areas of data management. Of course, for this webinar, we're focusing on collection and storage of data. So we want to avoid oversights in our data management, such as poor data quality, ignoring data governance, data integrations, and the return on investment from the usability of data. How reusable is your data versus the cost of storage? When it comes to data storage, as previously discussed, there's the traditional option of archiving. But archiving is just moving the data to an inactive storage location for long-term retention. Then there's backing up. It's making a copy and putting it in a secondary location. In each of those cases, it needs to be manually retrieved when it's needed, usually by an IT department. So you have to request that from your IT department. And it still requires the original data producer or software or system of record to read. But if we look at data preservation or digital preservation, your data is accessible and usable over time. No restoration is required. It protects against obsolescence and format failure, compatibility issues. So going back to that ACS article, it eliminates the potential for data to become unavailable over time. It also mitigates the risk to data from organizational changes. We see a lot of M&As these days. Preservation, it also emphasizes the long-term usability, not just storage, but streamlining the research and automation and standardization processes. And it really replaces the need for the individual archive or backup solutions, which eliminates redundancies and utilizes that R&D budget efficiently. I mentioned data governance. The goal in data management is to have one platform that collects and transforms, stores, and uses data in a way that supports a company's data governance frameworks and provides quality, regulatory compliance, security, and accessibility to the authorized users so that data is then ready for machine learning and Gen AI initiatives. Okay, so we've assessed our data. We've talked about the value from a regulatory and intellectual property standpoint. We've looked at our data storage options and the long-term necessity of choosing preservation over traditional archiving. Now we can talk about our Zontal solution and how it addresses data preservation needs. At Zontal, we're an SDMS, but not in the traditional sense. We capture and manage the original, raw, and processed data and convert data into a vendor-neutral format using the industry standard, all while providing visualizations that eliminate the need for the original software. We can also be used as an integration layer between data producers and ELNs and LIMS, et cetera. And because of how we capture and format the data, it's prepared for machine learning applications and other analytics initiatives. Let's take a spin around our data governance wheel. So Zontal is an enterprise data platform that supports a company's data governance frameworks and policies, and it's been built to be scalable and have that scalability in mind. We can be connected to warehouses and other data storage solutions, or you store your data within our enterprise platform for reuse. We also align against the allotrope data model and enrich metadata for searchability and preservation and reuse. And our platform can implement company security and access policies along with retention and legal hold policies, all while making the data easily findable in a vendor-neutral format. Okay, so I've talked about vendor-neutral quite a bit now. With Zontal, you have a FAIR data platform. FAIR stands for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So you take any data producer, and Zontal will watch for files and parse that to the AFO, that's Allotrope Foundation Ontology. After the data is parsed, the metadata is searchable, and the original data is now in Zontal. So after this first step of securing the data, the system is providing an enterprise data archive. Data is findable and accessible from our FAIR data principles. Once the original data is in Zontal, we can enrich the metadata, parse the data to a vendor-neutral format, and align the metadata to the AFO or a FAIR format. So for example, mass spec data is already pretty well standardized across vendors and uses the MZML format, and therefore it doesn't need a new format created, while ELN data has different naming and formatting conventions across vendors. So we align to the vendor-neutral ASM, Allotrope Simple Model format, which is based on a JSON and is both human and machine readable. So after this second step of preserving the data, the system is providing an enterprise digital preservation platform. The data is now interoperable and reusable on top of being findable and accessible. For ELN data, the Zontal platform addresses that industry-wide need for decommissioning and consolidating ELNs across life sciences, no matter if it's a legacy system or a recently acquired company using a different ELN or the current system of record. And we have a universal ELN application viewer that allows users to view their ELN record within Zontal, download attachments, check for record completeness, and pulls in the complete audit trail from the original system. And I will show that in the demo at the end of this presentation. Whoops, sorry, finger slipped. We can also decommission legacy LIMS. So we can capture and manage that research data and future-proof it using industry standards and allow the data to be exchanged with other enterprise systems, which provides that single source of truth and a single point of integration. Having a single point of integration with data in a vendor-neutral format then allows our customers to reuse their data and, again, preparing it for machine learning initiatives. Okay, so we've talked about data producers and consumers and analytics, etc., and how they can all be integrated into the Zontal platform. But I think this graphic really shows that we are a comprehensive data ecosystem with complete data lifecycle management in mind. Vendor neutral preservation, fair compliance, seamless integration. We cover all of that. And we cater to the entire data journey so that we safeguard valuable research and promote insights, innovation, and efficient decision making. So we're making the most of that R&D budget and what can be dedicated to data preservation and storage. So if we revisit our ELN journey from the beginning and we start that data journey today, we'd start by implementing the industry standards of FAIR and ASM. We'd harmonize the data into one managed solution capable of capturing existing records with no data loss, capable of bringing in future ELN data, and removing the need for the legacy software and licensing costs. We'd meet the needs of all of the users, from lab scientists to IT personnel to legal and regulatory users. And because we can now capture everything in one place without losing knowledge, we'd save millions of dollars in time and effort and human resources. Which brings us back to our opening problem. Where's the data? So in this case, when we ingested our client's legacy system, ELN records, into the Zontal platform and enriched the metadata, we were able to find experiments that the legacy system couldn't find. We were able to pull an advanced audit trail showing full record completion and signatures, and our client was successfully able to take that data to litigation, which is huge. Okay, now I want to highlight some features of our platform. So here's a screenshot of records that have been filtered. You can see along the top the filters that have been applied. Each of the rows in this screenshot is what we call an information package. What you can't see is the enterprise architecture and features that are used in our customer deployed solutions, including data capture and storage, the conversion to a vendor neutral format, the ability to assign security access and user roles, that centralized metadata catalog, reason for change in authorization, assigning retention policies, auto scaling, and it goes on and on and on. The Zontal platform, it's made of various modules that enable different capabilities. I'm going to specifically talk about a couple. Applications hub, so that's where you'd find your ELN viewer. That's where you'd find your chromatography viewer, some other instrument viewers. My colleague did a presentation with Astrix on February 12th, and she talked about chromatography and utilizing the methods hub. So you can go back and revisit that webinar if you want to learn more about that. Our chemistry hub is very cool. It allows searching for chemical structures, and I'll show a screenshot of that. It makes Zontal structure and reaction aware. And this really makes us unique and shows that we're more than just a traditional SDMS or a data lake. Our platform and our applications are designed for scientists by scientists. So if you look at this, you can search on the compound, you can search by structure type, you can put in the smiles and have the structure drawn, you can upload the structure, and just being able to search on a chemical compound is it's really cool. It's a big deal, I think. An example of how we capture metadata. Here's a mass spec example of how we extract metadata. So it can be extracted at any location or file from an instrument or a system directory, and can include the file name, the folder name, or any data from a parsable file. And this is a mass links example showing metadata being extracted from folders, from a folder, and then multiple files. And then you can always take this metadata and say, oh, I want to also search on, maybe something from a different file from this folder or another folder, and enrich the metadata in that way. A couple screenshots of our universal ELN viewer. So again, because we are bringing ELN data in from any number of vendors, we want a pretty standardized way of viewing it and not specific to a legacy or a current ELN that not someone else may not be familiar with. So I'll kind of go with my arrow. If you can see it across the top, we have sections, and these are all sections that were created in the original record. And so whatever sections were created, we bring those over. The field, same thing. We can bring over the chemical reaction. The full audit trail is captured per record. So you could click on this and see every instance of change, creation, modification, everything like that from the original record. So this is a chemistry record. This is a bioassay record, and so you can see the sections along the top are different from the chemistry record. The fields are different. And what's very cool about bringing in bioassay data is that we can maintain those parent-child table relationships. So for example, this plates field, this plates table here, we have the second row highlighted, and the wells table below is populating based on which row is selected from the plates field. And I'll show a demo of this in the demo here, actually, which is next. Okay, so I may have to pause this a couple times, so stick with me, but we're going to show some generic data ingested from CambridgeSoft legacy ELN. I have a couple of records in here. We're going to show a chemistry experiment and a bioassay experiment. Along the side, you can see this is the metadata panel. It's all the properties that you can put in. You can add more. I'm going to just kind of circle around the retention. You can put the retention and show what the policy is, who has access to this record. And then I'm going to go up to our viewer. And I'm going to pause it here. So in most ELNs, there's some kind of project hierarchy, and we bring that capability into Zontal as well. So again, this is a generic example, but in a real customer environment, this tree would be populated with all of the relationships between projects and subfolders and the person, and it would be a expandable, collapsible. The highlighted entity record will always be like the one you're being shown on the right side is what will be highlighted then in the tree view, as we call it. Okay. And when you have multiple records in the tree view, you can, whatever you've viewed recently will show in the selected entities, and you can select as many as you want or one, and you can bulk generate PDF reports based off of the list here. You can also remove items from the list. But again, that seemed to be important to our customers as we were building this capability. And so we've brought that into Zontal. Okay, this tree view is collapsible so that you can focus on your data. And another thing we have updated, this is an older demo I did, but this metadata panel at the top is also now collapsible so that the user can really focus on their scientific data. So again, this is a chemistry experiment. We can hover over the reaction to enlarge it in case you have very large structures in that reaction and you need to see it better. These tables are, you can select whatever was written in the original record will be brought over into Zontal. I want to show under this observations tab, whatever attachments come in can be downloaded to their original format. So for example, this is a .docs and it will download as a .docs. Okay, the audit trail, this is a big deal. With our audit trail, you can kind of see, again, very generic, but it's got, this is the original system of record audit trail that's been brought over. We've enhanced it. So you can see the creation, by whom it was last modified, the date, the field, the section, and then these arrows, if you click, or these arrows indicate change to the record. So if you click on this, you can see both the selected version and the previous version. And you can download the audit trail. Okay, now we'll select a bioassay record. And first showing, of course, it's bringing over the tables that were put into the original ELN. You can also maintain hyperlinks and URLs. So that's an instruction sheet that can be clicked on. And if you have the access, you can open it. It'll take you to the sign-in page. Here are our parent-child relationship tables. You can see that the Wells table populates according to the plates row that's been selected. So again, we maintain that relationship, which our users really wanted to keep. And of course, that makes sense. Okay, with that, we're at the end. Any questions?
Good stuff, Danielle. Thank you so much. Great presentation, cool demo. Real quick, before we get into any Q&A, let me just do a quick thing. I usually stop the recording now.